The year was 1899. The streets of Manila still echoed with the cheers of victory over Spain. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered like a slow-burning fuse. The United States, fresh from triumph, promised liberty to the Filipino people, but their actions told a different story. What began as an alliance against Spain quickly turned into a new and brutal war. One waged in jungles and villages, on dusty roads, and in hidden mountain trails. This is the Philippine-American War, a conflict soaked in blood, betrayal, and forgotten by most history books. In December 1898, the Treaty of Paris was signed, officially ending the Spanish-American War. For the United States, it was a moment of celebration. New territories had been gained, and a new era of influence had begun. For the Philippines, however, the treaty was a death sentence for their hopes of independence. They had fought side by side with American troops, expecting freedom as the prize. But the treaty handed the islands from Spain to the United States like property in a transaction. The voices of the Filipino people were absent from the negotiations, their government ignored as if it did not exist. In Manila, American soldiers patrolled the streets, not as allies, but as occupiers. Tensions began to grow in whispers and suspicious glances. Emilio Aguinaldo, leader of the Filipino independence movement, could not ignore the signs. His army had sacrificed so much to defeat Spain, only to face a new foreign power that seemed intent on replacing the old one. He prepared for negotiations, but also for the possibility of war. In the back of his mind, he knew the Americans had not come to leave. On the night of February 4th, 1899, a shot rang out near the San Juan Bridge. An American sentry opened fire on Filipino troops who had crossed an invisible line, one that neither side had formally agreed upon. That single gunshot ignited a war that would rage for years. The skirmish quickly spread along the defensive lines, turning the night into chaos. By morning, Manila was under full-scale attack. The Americans, better armed and organized, pushed the Filipino forces back. What might have been resolved with diplomacy now turned into an irreparable conflict. Each side blamed the other for starting the bloodshed. The American press portrayed the Filipinos as rebels, resisting lawful authority, while Aguinaldo declared that his nation was fighting for the same independence Americans once fought for. The war's moral lines were drawn, and each side prepared for a long and bitter struggle. American forces, led by seasoned veterans of the Spanish-American War, moved swiftly to secure key cities. Their firepower was unmatched artillery, machine guns, and warships along the coasts. Battles in the open favored the Americans, and the Filipino army suffered heavy losses in the early months. Aguinaldo realized the danger of fighting in conventional formations. He had no choice but to withdraw from the cities, retreating into the countryside. There, the terrain favored the defenders. Mountains, jungles, and rivers became natural fortresses for his men. But the American commandos were relentless. They pursued the Filipinos into rural provinces, burning towns suspected of aiding the rebels. The war was no longer about capturing territory. It was about breaking the will of the people. By the end of 1899, Aguinaldo dissolved his formal army and embraced guerrilla warfare. Small bands of fighters struck American patrols at night, ambushed supply convoys, and disappeared into the forests before reinforcements could arrive. This strategy frustrated the Americans and stretched their forces thin. The U.S. military responded with harsh countermeasures. They instituted a policy of reconcentration, forcing entire populations into guarded camps to cut off support for the guerrillas. Conditions in these camps were horrific, with disease and starvation claiming countless lives. Villages suspected of harboring fighters were burned to the ground. The Americans called it pacification, but to the Filipinos, it was an unending nightmare of survival. In September 1901, guerrillas in the town of Balangaja on the island of Samar launched a surprise attack on an American garrison, killing dozens of soldiers. It was one of the most devastating defeats for U.S. forces in the entire war. The American public was shocked, and military leaders demanded vengeance. General Jacob H. Smith gave an infamous order: kill everyone over 10. Samar was to be turned into a howling wilderness. American troops carried out brutal reprisals, slaughtering civilians and destroying livelihoods. The island's population suffered immensely. This event became one of the war's most notorious episodes, remembered for its cruelty and its lasting scars on the people of Samar. As the war dragged into its third year, Aguinaldo's position grew desperate. The Americans launched relentless search operations, determined to capture him and end organized resistance. Villagers were pressured to betray his location, and some gave in under threat of death or destruction. In March 1901, Aguinaldo was captured in Palanan, Isabela, after a daring operation by American forces posing as prisoners, escorted by captured Filipino scouts. His arrest was a major blow to the independence movement. Under pressure, Aguinaldo swore allegiance to the United States, urging his countrymen to lay down their arms. But in many provinces, the fighting continued. Even after Aguinaldo's surrender, pockets of resistance refused to yield. Leaders like Macario Sakay carried on the struggle, believing that independence was worth any cost. These fighters operated in the shadows, moving constantly to avoid capture. The Americans intensified their campaigns, combining military force with political maneuvering. They offered amnesty to those who surrendered and promised gradual reforms. Some fighters accepted, weary of war. Others saw it as a trap. The conflict had shifted from a national movement under a central leader to a series of fragmented insurgencies, each fighting for its own survival. In the southern islands of Mindanao and Sulu, the Moro people Muslim communities, with a long history of resisting outside control, rose against American rule. They had not been part of Aguinaldo's movement, but they refused to submit to foreign occupation. The Moro rebellion became a war within a war, lasting years beyond the official end of the Philippine-American War. American troops fought brutal battles in remote forts and swamps, facing warriors who would not surrender even in the face of certain death. These campaigns were marked by massacres and controversial tactics, further staining America's reputation in the archipelago. Back in the United States, the war sparked fierce debate. The Anti-Imperialist League, which included figures like Mark Twain and Andrew Carnegie, condemned the conflict as a betrayal of American values. They argued that the U.S. had become the very kind of empire it once fought to escape. Newspapers published accounts of atrocities, shocking many Americans who had believed the war was a noble mission. Congressional hearings revealed disturbing orders and civilian suffering. Despite this, the war continued, sustained by political and economic interests in controlling the Philippines as a gateway to Asia. By 1902, organized resistance had largely collapsed. The United States declared the war officially over, though fighting persisted in various regions. The military shifted its focus to pacification through infrastructure projects, schools, and local governance reforms. American authorities worked to portray themselves as benevolent rulers, but the memories of the war's brutality were still fresh. For many Filipinos, the schools and roads came at too high a price. the islands were placed under U.S. colonial administration, a status that would last for decades until independence was finally granted. After World War II, the Philippine-American War left a staggering toll. Historians estimate that hundreds of thousands of Filipinos, many of them civilians, died from violence, disease, and famine. Entire communities were destroyed, and the scars ran deep. American losses were far smaller, but the psychological impact on soldiers was profound. Many returned home haunted by what they had seen and done. The war was one of the deadliest in Philippine history, yet it faded into obscurity in American memory. In the decades that followed, the war was largely omitted from U.S. history books. It did not fit the image of America as a liberator and defender of freedom. Instead, it lingered in the shadows, known only to historians and the families of those who fought. In the Philippines, the war became a symbol of sacrifice and resistance. Stories of heroism and tragedy were passed down through generations, keeping the memory alive. Yet the full truth remained buried under layers of political convenience and selective memory. The Philippine-American War exposed the contradictions of American foreign policy. A nation born from a struggle against colonialism had embraced imperialism when it suited its interests. It also demonstrated the limits of military power against a determined population fighting for its homeland. Guerrilla warfare, political resistance, and sheer resilience proved as potent as any army. These lessons would echo in later conflicts, from Vietnam to Afghanistan. Even after the Philippines gained independence in 1946, the legacy of the war endured. Political ties, military agreements, and cultural exchanges were shaped by those years of conflict. For many Filipinos, the war was the first true test of national identity, a moment when they stood together against a powerful foreign invader. For Americans, it remained an uncomfortable reminder of the costs of empire, one that many preferred to forget. Today, the Philippine-American War is being rediscovered by historians, educators, and activists. Its lessons are discussed not only in classrooms, but also in debates about modern foreign policy and military intervention. The war serves as a warning about the dangers of power unchecked by principle and the resilience of people fighting for their freedom. Though over a century has passed, its echoes remain in the politics, culture, and shared history of both nations. History has many shadows, chapters written in blood and pain, then quietly tucked away. The Philippine-American War is one of them. It was a war that reshaped nations, tested the limits of endurance, and revealed the contradictions at the heart of empire. It reminds us that freedom, once promised, must be honored, or it becomes just another word in the speeches of those who wield power. We owe it to the past and to the future to remember.